I'd like to welcome everybody to this Zoom event with Wisconsin Department of Revenue Secretary Peter Barca, who will discuss the budget, the state budget, and how it may apply to businesses and especially to Kenosha County. I ask that everybody please, if you're not already muted, keep yourself muted so that Peter will not be interrupted during this presentation. I do want to make a little introduction about Peter. Peter, I'm going to make you blush probably, but that's okay. Peter Barca was appointed as Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Revenue by Governor Tony Evers in January 2019. Secretary Barca, a lifelong citizen of Kenosha and Summers, served in the state legislature as a representative from the 64th Assembly District from 1985 until 1993, when he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He returned to the state legislature in 2009 and served until January of 2019. During this time, he spent 7 years as the Assembly Minority Leader, where he passed a wide range of bills and worked to improve and strengthen the legislative process. This included working with the Assembly Speaker to develop an memorandum of understanding and to create productive bipartisan task forces. Following his time in Congress, Secretary Barca served for nearly 5 years as the Midwest Regional Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration during the Clinton administration. He was also appointed to lead the National Regulatory Fairness Program, an initiative aimed at making regulatory enforcement more small business friendly. Secretary Barca later spent nearly a decade as Vice President and then President of Aurora Associates International, an international project management company that conducted international development projects in more than 25 countries. Prior to that, he had served as CEO of a non-profit organization focused on employment and training, housing, and rehabilitative services. Secretary Barca began his career as a director of the Friendship Camp, a camp for children with disabilities, as a teacher and later as a team leader for students with special needs. He received his undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, received his master's in public administration and educational administration from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and attended graduate school at Harvard University. Secretary Barca and his wife have a son who is a graduate of Fordham University and a daughter who is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So, Peter, that's pretty impressive background and credentials there. And the show is all yours now. We look forward to hearing all about our budget. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lou. Great to be with you. And, bittersweet because this will be the last one I'll do with Lou Molitor at the helm. Lou didn't mention we actually worked together for a number of years down in Lake County, Illinois, and we've been friends for 20 years, and I just think so highly of him, and I salute him for his terrific leadership of the Kenosha Chamber of Commerce, as I said in the Kenosha News back when he announced his retirement. So, Lou, thanks for a job well done, and you certainly have built the chamber and into a very important organization in this community, and so we certainly will miss your leadership, but I know you'll stay involved, so that's terrific. I also know a couple of my former colleagues. I see Representative Kirkman's on the line, so, and Representative Onstead, I believe. So I don't know if anybody else is on, but I certainly appreciated serving with them for quite a number of years. And so terrific to be with all of you and to share information on a variety of topics, as Lou indicated. I'm going to talk about the Kenosha County economy and some key statistics. I'm very fortunate at the Department of Revenue that I get to head. We've got, like all the leading economists that do the macroeconomic reviews of where our economy is going. We put together a weekly report of key economic variables and a quarterly forecast. This is something that was suspended in the last administration. The governor encouraged us to make this data public, and we, at the end, I'll show you how you can access it much more readily, but we think that's very important. Also, I'm going to share a little bit about information about the success of the vaccine, which of course, as we know, the recession we've gone through was all public health related. So there's nothing more important than that. And then I'll end a little bit on the American Rescue Act and what the governor announced in terms of his intent to utilize the funds for a Badger Build Back to help assist small businesses and others so that we can have a stronger bounce back. So that's what I intend to present today. I certainly am open to questions, and if you want to start the slides there, Emily, thank you so much. Next slide talks a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine success we've had in Wisconsin. And as I indicated, it's just so important that we do that. We're very proud of the fact we have 2.6 million doses already administered in Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, almost 30% of Wisconsin's population has received at least one dose so far. We just passed the 1 million mark in terms of the Wisconsin population, 17.2% of the population, and actually over 25% of adults, because we have a little less than 4 million adults in Wisconsin. And probably most importantly, we're almost at that 75% mark of people 65 years of age and older. The reason why that's so important is our hospital systems will tell you that they're much more vulnerable to have comorbidity and end up in the emergency room or even worse. So that's been a big focus of the governor and the administration. And the goal is to get 80% of our population vaccinated. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that Wisconsin's a national leader. We're ranked first in the nation in the percentage of the doses administered. Now, we can't always control the supply, but we can control what we do with the supply. And 94% of the doses we receive are utilized immediately compared to 80% nationwide. And we're first in the upper Midwest states as well. So if the governor were here, because he's a modest guy, he'd say a big part of this success is because of our partnership. The governor was in town just a couple of weeks ago at the old Shopko site, where we opened another vaccination center that was dedicated. So our partnership with Kenosha County has been very important, but also our partnerships with the healthcare facilities around the state, whether it be hospitals, clinics. The governor just authorized even dentists to give vaccines because we know it's a race against the variants, and we have to beat these variants by having people vaccinated before all these other variants from Brazil and South Africa and the UK, which are just very virulent. So we're doing very well. We're very pleased about that. We have a weekly conference call practically with our administration to talk about this and to be focused on it. But we thank the partnerships that we have, which we think are vital. We go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the data that our economists put together for Kenosha County specifically. And we have some good news to share there too, because Kenosha County is doing a nice job. The next slide, you can see that, percentage change of non-farm employment in Kenosha County is doing better than the state as a whole. We're almost back to where we were pre-pandemic in Kenosha County. We're down less than 1% compared to the state as a whole. We're down 5%, but we're growing with each passing week, and that's important. And kudos to Kenosha and my home area, which I'm so proud of. Next slide. Sales tax receipts. You can see that sales tax receipts are growing. And in 2020, they grew significantly compared to 2019. And Kenosha County, again, just a little bit above in terms of sales tax receipts. We're at 10.8% growth compared to 9.9% for the state as a whole. Next slide. Next slide, sort of a mixed bag. I mean, it's a very sad situation. Our economists, if they were here, they would talk about the K-shaped recovery. That, compared to usually you have V-shaped recoveries, you go down during a recession and then you come right back up. But while most of the economy is going right back up, it's going off to the side, producing the K for the service industries. So you can see for hotels and restaurants, it's still down, 27%. Kenosha County, not quite as bad at 18.9%, but still, that's the area where we focused a lot of our time and energy. The Department of Revenue had the good fortune of standing up the Wisconsin CARES Act Phase 2 and the restaurant program and the Wisconsin Farm Support. We administered those, and we're very proud of the kind of success that we had, which is helping to start that, that build back, which is so important. So now next slide, I'm just going to talk about, here's a little bit about the budget overview and what we're going to focus on: small business, entrepreneurship, workforce, education, infrastructure, local government, and the rest there are the things that we'll focus on for today. The next slide, though, talks about Act 1, the very first act that was signed into law. I'm very proud. It came out of the Department of Revenue. We've been working on it for about 2 years. We called it the Taxpayer Enhancement Plan because it provided for benefits for taxpayers across the spectrum, whether it be in the regulatory realm or tax breaks or making it easier to access tax information. So one of the first things, the governor in his last budget had proposed that self-employed individuals be able to have a full deduction for their medical insurance premiums. They're the only ones that did not get that benefit. Unfortunately, it did not pass as part of the budget, but we were able to pass it as part of the taxpayer enhancement package. So for, finally, we have equity for the self-employed to be able to deduct those healthcare premiums. So very important. Next, something very important in Kenosha County, as we all know, has been utilization of the historic rehab tax credit. That's something that on a bipartisan basis, our Representative Onstead and Kirkman, myself, all worked together on to get that historic rehab tax credit in place. But what I learned at the Department of Revenue from realtors and developers is that they couldn't really access it quite as strongly as they would like to. And what they wanted to do was to be able to access these credits up front so that rather than doing it year by year, they could access all 5 years and monetize those. And they said many of the more difficult projects, therefore, could go forward. And of course, we saw at the Stella and the old KYF, utilizing those credits are just so vital. And so we did it through an administrative order here at the Department of Revenue, but we wanted to pass it in the statute so it would last beyond, my tenure or the administration as a whole. So we put in this taxpayer enhancement package, and that's now the law. So that'll allow many more of these projects to go forward. One of the big issues that bubbled up the last month that this bill was up was the PPP. And as you probably are aware, normally when businesses receive grants of money under the IRS code and Department of Revenue, if it's money that you got granted to you, you couldn't deduct it because it wasn't money that you had yourself. But the governor decided to support this just because of the depth of the pandemic. So on this one-time basis, and given the challenges that businesses had, again on a bipartisan basis, we got that double benefit through. But the governor also insisted that, and actually I want to give credit to Representative McGuire, who helped lead the effort on the CARES Act to make sure that since these are the businesses that took Wisconsin grant money, who were the most vulnerable of all, unlike the PPP, where you had some businesses took the funds because they didn't know what it would be like, and then they actually, did extremely well. One of the hardware shops in Kenosha told me he doubled his business during the pandemic because so many home improvements are taking place. But the CARES Act strictly went to those who were in desperate need. So we are glad we're able to get that through the Ways and Means Committee, which Representative Kirkman also and Representative Onstead picked. It's ironic, all of our Kenosha legislators serve on that committee, which I'm very fortunate because that's the committee I interact with the most, and then the Senate Revenue Committee. And then also we got the EITC to allow people to choose, and many low-wage workers that work for small businesses that their industry doesn't dictate higher wages. If they only make $9, $10, $11 an hour, they get an earned income tax credit. And this would allow them to choose either 19 or 20 income, whatever puts them in a better position. So anyway, that was another important benefit that passed as part of this, and as well as many others. We broadened the for the homestead credit to allow more veterans and seniors to qualify. And there were literally dozens of provisions that were in this act, that too many to really enumerate, but these are some of the most important ones that you're going to want to be aware of. Then moving forward, the CARES Act money, other than using the money obviously to set up testing centers and contact tracing and then the vaccination centers, the second biggest utilization that we had of the money of CARES Act were to support small businesses. And I mentioned that we had the good fortune of administering some of these programs in cooperation with our Department of Ag and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and Division of Department of Tourism. And over $300 million was allocated for small business relief. Next slide, we go into some of what's in the budget, and many of these items I think are vitally important, and I hope that for those that you find important, you'll advocate with your legislators to have them included in the budget. I know they said they're going to start with a base level budget, but the way it works is that when you get in the finance committee, they'll have options. They'll say, okay, here's what the governor proposes, here's what a base level would be, and then here's some other creative options. So, but some of these just scream out for attention to help our small business economy. First one, maybe most of all, a $200 million fund to assist small businesses affected by the pandemic, specifically for retaining their employees. We knew in many cases employees' hours were cut back and they had to be laid off. And so this will help to make sure that they can bring them back and have funds available. Also, a $100 million investment in our state's entrepreneur through a venture capital fund. This is one near and dear to my heart because actually Governor Walker had asked me to serve on his venture capital task force that Mark Buer had chaired, who was a former Tommy Thompson Secretary of Administration. And the consensus of our group was we needed to do a $100 million fund in order to have an evergreen nature of it. And at the time, we could only get the support to do 25 million, which was a good start. But the governor's proposing we do the entire 100 million, which will be very important long term. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time that just have a difficult time having access to venture capital. That's one area where Wisconsin lags behind, both coasts and many other states. So this one's an important one. Also, well, the governor put in the medical insurance element because we didn't know if that would pass as part of the taxpayer enhancement package. So, and it did. I think we went backwards in the slide instead of forwards there. And then we want to move forward. Then 8 million on a one-time basis for WEDC awards for local development. So this would be important for the CABAs of the world. So very important to get funds in their hands. Then in this slide, just a couple key items as well. 20 million to support training for organizations affected by the pandemic. Obviously, training is vital. We knew before the pandemic hit, workforce was our biggest challenge. And we're only a year or two away from going back to that still being our biggest challenge. So that's why the governor also focuses 8 million on local workforce development boards, which I'll bet you a lot of people in the chamber serve on those boards. So very important to have that money locally available. Another one that I care deeply about is increased funding for Buy Wisconsin, Buy Local, something that I know the chamber has been very aggressive in talking about and supporting your local small businesses. And then the last one is one that came actually out of the Department of Revenue as well. I had 8 of the 10 largest corporations in Wisconsin fly into Madison to meet with me in the revenue budget just before the governor introduced his last budget, saying that they felt the single most important thing we could do for economic vitality in the state of Wisconsin was to increase the R&D refundable credit. Now, Wisconsin is a 10% refundable credit now, and that's good. That puts us kind of in the middle of the pack. But what I heard that day, and it's not just for large businesses, just that they happen to be lobbying for it. I have a good friend that owns a manufacturing business in Racine that he has a chemist and engineer that this would benefit him for his medium-sized business. So it's important for all businesses. So the governor put this in his last budget, but it didn't pass. So I'm hoping it does this time, because to go to a 20% and double it R&D credit, that'll put Wisconsin amongst the premier states for promoting research and development. And I see Len's giving us a thumbs up. Appreciate that, Len. The governor being a former superintendent of schools, he really strongly believes in R&D, and hopefully we can get that through this time. So next slide. Just a few other items, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but just the one that stands out to me would be I've served on the WEDC board ever since its inception, and this would increase the WEDC annual block grant program by 10 million, and of course that supports things like our the research development the mayor's pushing and things of that sort. So very important. And also continued investment in workforce programs that we talked about before for apprenticeships, green job training, project search, all programs we think would be successful. Next slide. Next slide. I don't think you're going to have to lobby as hard on because, or talk to your legislators about, because both Democratic and Republican leaders have indicated they intend to support this. In the governor's last budget, he had proposed the largest investment in broadband in our state's history at $54 million, passed on a strong bipartisan basis, of course. Well, in this budget, the governor is proposing to nearly quadruple that, which again will put Wisconsin at the forefront. And boy, during this pandemic, have we ever seen how vitally important it is to have broadband, whether it's for school children to learn, and of course, increasingly kids are learning through broadband and through the internet. Even if they're in school, they still have to do their research projects, and they're not looking at Encyclopedia Britannica like you and I did, Lou. All their research is done in the internet. And then also, but for businesses, vitally important. And even I know the mayor has a plan to bring fiber optics in a more vibrant manner to Kenosha. So this potentially could help to serve that plan as well. So something very important. All our local leaders, our legislators, I know County Executive Cruiser, Mayor Antrim have combined with, making this a focus. When I was a legislator, I worked very closely with Carthage and our library system on our fiber optic system. And so that really will help the Kenosha County area enormously. Next slide. Higher education is President Tommy Thompson, former Governor Thompson would tell you, he's heralded the governor's investment in the UW system. The governor would continue the tuition freeze, but he would actually fund the freeze, which is very important. And of course, for Parkside and also for Gateway Technical College, a $36 million investment. We know how important their partnership programs are with our industry in the Kenosha Racine area. So this is an important investment that we need to make in the information age to stay abreast and to make sure that we continue to have one of the strongest, if not the strongest university system in the country and technical college system, which started right here in Wisconsin. Next slide. Healthcare. A couple things here that are very important. One is telehealth. This is something that was important even before the pandemic for specialty medical professions that we don't have enough people to go around, psychiatry being one of them. Through serving people through telehealth, they can serve many more patients. So it's very important from that standpoint. And then another item, which unfortunately still there's bipartisan, there's not bipartisan support for yet, but there should be. We just heard last night in our cabinet call, there's 3 more states, Wyoming and a couple other red states, North Carolina, the head of the majority leader in the Senate, who's a Republican, is supporting, taking the Medicaid dollars. And here's why it's important. Governor Walker did not want to do this because he was worried the money wouldn't be there long term. Well, that was a reasonable concern. Although I have to say, now with President Biden in office, we can be assured for the next 4 years at least, this money is going to be there. So we're talking $630 million we'll leave on the table if we don't accept the Badger Care Fund. So I think it's just something, personally, I think it was the biggest mistake in a generation. And but we're talking about over the next 4 years, $1.2 billion that we could be bringing into our state. So right now we're paying 100% of the freight for our Badger Care, and that's why it's important to bring this in. And we're one of only 12 states now. All of our neighboring states, whether they're Democrat or Republican, have taken these funds. We're one of only 12 states, and there's 3 states likely in this biennium, and maybe even in this budget, that are going to take the Badger Care funds. So we're basically subsidizing other states through not taking this money, and that's why it's an important issue. So anyway, just something I want to make you aware of, because it's if you think of all the funds that would be there if we took these funds that we could use for better supporting our small business entrepreneurs or give tax breaks to people, it would be an important one. Next slide. I'm not going to dwell quite as much on this, but Wisconsin's always been a state big in sustainability and conservation, and tourism is our 3rd largest industry. So things like the Nelson Stewardship Program, which has always been supported on a bipartisan basis, very important. Increased funding for municipal flood control and riparian restoration program. We know we've been prone to flooding, and this area, and I know the Fox Valley out in western Kenosha County, as well as problems we've been had in the city. So very important. Another item, the last item on this slide you can see is the Bolster Wisconsin Disaster Fund Program. You know, what ends up happening is the federal government does not declare a disaster, then the municipality is stuck with the bill. So this would bolster a Wisconsin disaster fund to fund those. And even with our civil unrest, this would help with that as well. Hopefully we won't face that again, but we know we're going to face flooding again and other inclement weather kinds of issues. And this would be an important issue to protect our municipalities. Next slide. Just a couple other things, being a Great Lakes state and Kenosha County being on the Great Lakes, we know erosion control has been a big issue with, you know, a couple houses sliding into the lake. And so that's an important one. And then have a pilot program to support flood proofing and try and prevent the floods that occur on our roads. So these are just a few other items that I think are important. PFAS, we just saw in western Wisconsin, then in French Island, and one of the municipalities there, PFAS has so infected their water, they have to drink bottled water now. So PFAS also has affected our agricultural industry. It's carcinogens have seeped into our crops, and they've had to confront that. So it's one of the more important items environmentally that we have to take seriously and invest in, and have testing and remediation to stay on top of this. Next slide. Other key investments, again, on a bipartisan basis, Wisconsin's always been big in supporting our infrastructure, our state highway system, multimodal. So these are all very important investments as well. Then the last one I want to really highlight, which is affordable workforce housing. What we've heard throughout Kenosha County, and I really want to commend the work being done in so many of our villages and cities. Marion Terranium has had a lot of workforce housing projects. Summers, George Stoner has, led the way with changing density requirements around the border near the city to allow apartment complexes to come in. But I know I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, all around the state, but obviously, especially in the Kenosha Racine area. And they have a hard time sometimes. Even, Speaker Voss, frankly, has shared with me on a couple occasions where he wanted to bring in new personnel and couldn't bring them in because there wasn't affordable housing. And so this is a very important one that I hope will get bipartisan support. The governor's very committed to making housing more affordable, and this type of a grant program to be able to be utilized locally would be very important. Next slide. The American Rescue Act plan, of course, we all know now that's law. It's $1.9 trillion investment in trying to build back better, as President Biden would say. The governor just announced yesterday, so this is hot off the press, of what the governor would intend to do with the money that's allocated for Wisconsin. 3.2 billion is coming into the state, and he would invest again very heavily in supporting our small business economy and investments to lead to economic prosperity. 50 million for the tourism industry, 600 million to help support small businesses in the We're All In type grant program that we talked about earlier. 200 million for infrastructure to help with our broadband. 500 million for pandemic response efforts. So he's already signaled where these funds are going to be utilized, and hopefully we can get bipartisan support for that effort, although the governor really does have the authority to expend the funds. I know we've tried to build bipartisan support. I know for our agency, we work, like I said earlier, very closely with our two standing committees at Ways and Means with Chairman Mako and our 3 Kenosha area legislators. Representative McGuire is a ranking member now, and then also with the Senate Revenue Committee. So that's something we're going to work very diligently on together. Then next, these are just a few piece of information of where you can get data from the Department of Revenue. The governor had encouraged us, something I really care about, to create a business development government relations unit. So, and one thing I want to make sure you should never worry about calling the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. If you Google it, you can get our customer service line. And the reason why I say that is we tape record every call we get. We ask people to rate the experience they have with the Department of Revenue. About a third of the people take that survey and they give us 98.9% customer satisfaction ratings, which I like to joke compares favorably with cable TV companies and many other sites. But we take it very seriously. We had a strategic plan to bolster our customer service, and it's something we feel very positive about. Here's some data. If you go to our website, we fashion ourselves as a one-stop site where you can get business registration. We link with DOA, workforce. We link with the DWD site, tax incentives we've had in the past, data analysis with DSPS. So if you're an entrepreneur looking for information, go to the DOR Badger site. You can get this. And then finally, one other slide is those economic reports I talked about. Quarterly, we do an economic outlook, but every week we put data in terms of where the economy is resting and where we're making gains, where we're lagging behind. Something Representative Kirkman championed was getting information about government spending for villages and towns, and we have that on our website too. You can find out exactly where the money comes from and where it goes on our site. So I would really encourage you to go to our site. And if you sign up at DOR Economist, Department of Revenue Economist at wisconsin.gov, you'll get these weekly reports sent to you every week. So Lou, that does it for my overview. Hope you found it useful, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Peter, are you okay with just taking questions just from people right over Zoom here?
Yes, absolutely. They can ask or put it on chat, whatever's more comfortable for them, and happy to answer whatever questions people have.
So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now. Please identify yourself and then ask the question, or you can put it on the chat to Peter or to Emily and we'll get it to them. Does anyone have any questions?
See our Register of Deeds on, Joel in Storage, she'll no doubt have a question. I see so many familiar faces. My pickleball partner, Ann Wasilewicz, she'll have a question for sure. And so feel free to fire away.
I see no question. Oh, there's a hand over there from somebody.
Nathan Thiel from
Rose, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rose Bogosian. I'm a broker in Kenosha. I also do property management. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit about the WERA program and how that's going.
Which one?
The WERA, the Wisconsin Emergency Rental Assistance.
Just based on what I hear on our cabinet calls, we had one last night, and Secretary Brennan indicated that, we're making good progress and that the money's going out. Very few glitches whatsoever with that. And we're feeling very positive. I mean, you tell me, Rose, you've been in this business a long time, if you feel it's going well, but we're feeling like the money is going out in that. I know it's very important to both, landlords as well as renters.
What I'm finding is that the public, the tenants need more information. I think there's a lot of people that could use the assistance but aren't aware of how to get it.
Oh, that's good feedback. Thank you so much. I'll pass that on, and we'll see if we could even put something on our website on that. We don't have that, but that's good feedback. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to make sure others know about that.
Lou, chat is disabled.
It is disabled, huh?
What's that?
You're not getting any questions on chat because chat's disabled.
Oh, that's too bad.
I have it open.
Okay, good. I just want to make one comment. The internet stuff is really terrific, but some controls need to be put into place because the quality of internet service in terms of its reliability, I've switched from AT&T to Spectrum, and the reliability is no better. It's faster, but it's no better. And I'm glad it's not being used to drive my car because I'd be dead. So we got to do something about not only getting it out there, but its reliability, because we're conducting business from this household, and my partner is conducting business all over the world, and it's driving us nuts.
Well, that's where I believe that investment in, broadband would make a big difference in that regard. So no question about it. And the mayor's initiative too, that, he's working on, I think would make a difference as well. So, but we know that's an issue. I appreciate you sharing it.
I have a question. Peter, I don't know, are you familiar or aware that FEMA is going to help cover the cost of funerals? By the way, I'm Ann with Piasecki Funeral Home. And FEMA has put into place some relief. People have to submit death certificates, funeral expenses, and there's a financial amount of $9,000 per funeral, or a maximum of $35,500 per application. I'm just wondering, if FEMA, their mission is to help people during and after disasters, are they, do you think, going to help the restaurants and service industry, the hotels or anything?
Well,
We've been awarded stimulus money, and I mean, I'm glad that FEMA has done this, but I'm also surprised.
I can't speak to why the feds might have had, FEMA handle this, or what the nature of that program is. I'm not quite as familiar with that. To be perfectly frank, I was on the National Advisory Commission for FEMA at one time, so I can reach out and see what I can learn from, from the people I work with over there, but I'm not familiar with that program at all. I appreciate you sharing it, though. I did not know about it. I know the SBA, where I've been with the SBA for almost 5 years, and they're the ones that administered the entire PPP program. So we had a lot of information on our website about that, so that businesses would know how to access it. And I know we had a couple of business owners in the Kenosha area that contacted me because they were having some issues on their payback. So I put them in touch with an attorney that handles that for the SBA. So, but I've not heard about this program with FEMA.
Peter,
Okay,
just when chat is now enabled, if anybody wants to ask a question via chat, that's fine.
Thank you, Emily, for enabling that.
Otherwise, any other questions from anyone else? Now is your time. We have Secretary Barca's undivided attention.
And certainly, if you want to follow up, like I said, we're very easy to reach, either through our customer service line, or you can email me at dorsecretary@wisconsin.gov.gov, and happy to, if you have follow-up questions or things you want to shoot our way, be very good. Samantha said, will you be sharing the information with everyone?
Yeah, if
You mean the
it'll be,
PowerPoint?
I'm sorry, Peter, but it will be on YouTube later today for people to view also.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Lou. And we can make the PowerPoint available as well if you want to get it through email. Yeah, we're happy to send you an email copy of it as well for anybody that would like it.
Anybody else? Other
I wonder,
Nathan.
I wonder if the secretary could tell us what one or two things he thinks are the greatest inflection points for the future of our economy in this state that we should be watching for?
Well, I mean, clearly what screams out at all of us is when we get herd immunity at 80%. That means that 80% of the public would be vaccinated. That would be by far the biggest inflection point, short term or medium term. I don't know what you want to call it, but we're on track to make progress. One thing that the chamber could help with is sharing information with your members about why it's so important to be vaccinated. I know that there's some people that are skeptical of vaccinations. I was pleased that, every living former president had gotten the vaccinations. Obviously, they had the greatest information available to them in terms of the safety and efficacy of it. And they wouldn't be getting it if it weren't safe. And of course, all the public health officials have done the same thing, and the governor and many others. So I would just encourage the chamber to, to get information to your businesses, to try and encourage anybody who, that's at all open to it, that they get their vaccinations, because it's only when we reach that 80% level that we have the herd immunity. So that would be the short term. Medium term would be to bring back our, service sector, and obviously with the funds from the American Rescue Act and the governor's initiatives, and as well as the legislature, all those together will make a big effort to help, businesses to come out on the other end of the pandemic. And then I would say longer term, it goes back to workforce again. Making sure we have a trained, educated workforce, vitally important. Excuse me, I didn't go into the governor's investments in education. I did higher ed, but I know the governor would like to do what we haven't done since Governor Tommy Thompson was in office, which is to fund 2/3 of education and to bolster our special education funding, so we're not so reliant on property taxes. But as in meeting with my economists regularly and looking at things, the future is going to rest with those who have a world-class trained workforce, and so we're fortunate having Parkside and Gateway and Herzing and schools right here in the Kenosha community. Very important. We're lucky to have the University of Wisconsin system, which President Thompson's now leading, which is one of the best in the world. And so we have to make sure we're investing, but also on a K-12 system, who we elect to the school board, and not only Kenosha Unified, but the county school districts makes an enormous difference. And so all of those steps are vitally important. That's why in this budget, one of the things that I talked about was doubling the research and development credit. I'm sure everybody on this call would recognize how vital that is, so that we do the research here in Wisconsin, and we therefore create the business and the products and the services right here and create jobs here. So those would be the things. Thanks for the question.
Any
Secretary
other questions?
Barca, I said that I wouldn't have a question in the chat, but you sparked just a question in general. I know that in the governor's budget, there had been a lot of discussion about, revenue and different ways of funding, both at the state and also the local level. And just curious if any headway, just your thoughts or reflections on kind of bipartisan support for what are the discussions as far as revenue at our local levels, instead of just relying heavily on property tax.
Well, the governor did propose a local option sales tax. Of course, Pleasant Prairie would benefit enormously if they allowed communities of Pleasant Prairie size to institute it, because obviously we bring in a ton of money from that outlet mall into Kenosha County. In order for that to be effectuated, it would have to pass by referendum anyway. So it's not as if the people of your village or the people of Kenosha County would have to support it if we were going to go to a local option sales tax. I know Chairman Mako, who I become good friends with, had a hearing at the end of the last session on this. He's supportive of some version of this. So there is some bipartisan interest in this, and but it's something I think that local leaders are going to have to talk about more aggressively, and if you want to see that take place. But personally, I feel very comfortable with that, because I think that each community should be able to make their own decisions. When I was first elected back in, it makes me sound ancient, but in 1984, we felt during that period you were elected at a village or city level just like we were elected, and you should control your own destiny. And but I think this local option sales tax would enable that, because I'm sure our legislators would tell you, the most painful thing is when you go knock on doors and you find elderly people that have to choose between their medicine and paying their property tax bill. And so at least with sales tax, you can choose how much money you want to spend and how many products you want to buy. With property taxes, you just get a bill every year based on what the needs are and what the local boards approve. And personally, I think it's a real plus, and I hope it opens up a very vibrant debate.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? I see and read none. So Secretary Barca, thank you very much for sharing all this information with us today. We appreciate your insight and your leadership and the Department of Revenue. Best of luck to you, and let us know how not only the Kenosha Area Chamber of Commerce, but also Kenosha businesses, and municipalities, many of whom are represented here, how we can help you be successful and help the state be successful. So.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate, you know, I've always appreciated my relationship with the chamber, and, you know, any information we can provide, don't ever hesitate to contact us. So all the best and have a great day.
Very good. And just a quick note, again, we mentioned that this presentation will be available on YouTube later today. Also on, we have a couple other Zoom programs coming up. We're trying to work into in-person events, and that'll be coming pretty soon. But on the 16th of April, we have Senator Tammy Baldwin, who will have a little conversation with us, similar to what Peter did, about what's going on in Washington from her perspective. And also on the 20th of April, we have local leaders, the city, the county, Pleasant Prairie, some of the villages, Summers and Bristol will be talking to us about all the wonderful things that are happening in Kenosha County. And there are indeed a lot of things happening in Kenosha County. So that should be a very informative session. So you can visit our website for more information. And thanks for attending. And as always, have a great Kenosha County day. Thank you.